Today's conversation might make you a little uncomfortable, and that's exactly the point. Because what happens when a woman walks away from a system she once fought to belong to and finally tells the truth about it? In this episode, we're talking about misogyny, power, and the invisible rules that shape how women compete, survive, and stay silent until they don't. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soft Power Project. And today I have a really exciting host. Her name is Laura Behnke, and she spent years working inside sports media as an anchor. But recently she went viral after speaking out about misogyny in the industry, gaining more than 120,000 followers in just 1 week. But today's conversation isn't just about that moment. It's about what happens when someone who has been inside the system finds the courage to walk away and speak up about what they've seen, and why so many of us find ourselves navigating that same tensions in our own lives. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you about this today because I feel like it is so hard to find someone who actually has the courage to talk about it because it's hard. It's a very uncomfortable subject.
It is. It is. And as you said, it affects so many of us. And, systemic misogyny is it's a system. It is designed to make us uncomfortable so that we don't have the conversation that you and I are about to have, because the only way to break down these systems is for us to talk about them. So yeah, that's why it's uncomfortable. They don't want us to be talking about things like this.
Yeah. And I would love to start from the beginning. I know you spent years working as a sports anchor, right in the middle of it. And when you first entered that industry, what was your belief in sports? And what did you slowly see that surprises you?
Yeah, well, sports was my life. I lived and breathed sports. I was not somebody who was just, as I was accused of many times, people were like, well, do you actually like sports? Or are you just the, pretty woman that they've stuck in there to look good and provide diversity for the sports department? So I got that constantly. Do you even like sports? And the answer was yes, I loved them. I grew up watching sports. I never really played. I am not an athlete, but I grew up watching them with my dad. I loved American football very much, and it just all felt like it was leading me towards this career, which I finally kind of landed on when I was in college, deciding I wanted to be a sports anchor and reporter. And I loved the idea that it was male dominated because I loved the idea of a challenge. I liked the possibility of breaking into something that before me not many women had been able to do. I saw that as a challenge, and I loved the idea of being a different element in this world, this male dominated world. I liked this idea of bringing a female perspective into this world, which is really funny now that I think about this. Not funny in a haha way, but funny in a kind of sad way, because that was all part of my motivation in getting in. And yet once I got in, all I wanted was to not be seen as a woman, because I wanted to be part of the system. I wanted to be one of the boys. And when people called me a female sports reporter, I hated it, because nobody called my coworkers male sports reporters. They were just sports reporters. But here I was, a female sports reporter, and I rejected it. I really hated being singled out for something that I had no control over, and that, in my opinion, should not have made me any different than anyone else. I was still doing the exact same job. I was covering the exact same stories. In many cases, I was doing it better, but I always got tagged with the label of female sports reporter. And I had to unpack a lot of that once I finally left the business, to realize that, like, that's part of what made me so great, was the fact that I was a woman. That gave me a different perspective on things. That just helped round out who I was as a storyteller. And I rejected it for so many years. And it's part of what made me great. But, as I was in the business, I will never forget when I was an intern. I was still in college and I was interning at a local station. I grew up in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area, and I was interning at one of the stations there. And I remember one of the male reporters telling me, as a woman, it would be easier for me to get a job. It would be harder for me to prove I deserved it once I got there. And I didn't ask any questions about that. I
Mhm.
didn't say, that's messed up. I just internalized, okay, as a woman, it's going to be easier for me to get a job because I'm different, because I provide diversity. I help them check off a box. We now have a woman. So I might get my foot in the door easier than some other people, but everyone will automatically assume I didn't deserve it. So I took that with me, that I had to be perfect. That was what I took from that. I have to be perfect. I cannot make mistakes. I cannot accidentally say the wrong name. Everyone will think I'm an idiot. When we're humans, we all make mistakes. We all say the right. It doesn't mean we don't know what we're talking about. It just means that sometimes our mouths and our brains are not working together.
Yeah.
And so, but I lived in fear of that. I lived in fear of making mistakes on air. I thought it would ruin me, that it would ruin my career. And none of my male coworkers were worrying about that. Some of them knew far less about sports than I did and were constantly making dramatic mistakes. And it was no big deal. It was no big deal. So from, I don't know, 20 years old on, which was when that advice was given to me, I knew I faced a different challenge ahead. And the other part of that advice that got into my head and really messed with me was this: it's going to be easier for you to get a job. So that told me, as a woman, I'm going to be able to get a job, but these stations they might hire, an unlimited number of men, but they're only hiring one woman. So every other woman is your competition. They could all take your job, or you could take theirs. But it started to instill in me this belief that I could not trust other women in the business, that we were all out for the same, like, one job. Yes, there were jobs for us. There just weren't enough of them. And so that set me on a course of constantly feeling in competition with any woman that I saw step into a press conference, step into a locker room. It automatically put me on the defensive. It automatically made me question: should she be here? Is she here for the right reasons? Never thought that about any of the men that I encountered, but I automatically had a lot of mistrust of other
Mhm.
women in the business, because I knew there just were not that many spots for us. And what just makes me the most upset now when I think about that element of it is the problem. It wasn't that there were so many of us trying to fit into one spot. It was that there was only one spot. So
Mhm.
if we were not so busy fighting with each other over these very few opportunities, well, maybe we could have banded together to have tried to create more opportunities for us, instead of this idea that I can't help somebody behind me because they might come and take my job. And so, in that vein, I never in my 16 years in TV had a female mentor. Never. Because no one wanted to help the next generation. And women, we also know, we were on TV, it's a visual medium. Women
Mhm.
knew that they were going to age out of the business at some point.
Yep.
And so the last thing you wanted to do was to be training the person who was going to come take your job. So I never once had a female mentor. And that makes me so sad. And so I was just, once again, then the only people I had to look to for guidance were men. And they're telling me from their perspective. So again, I continue to
Yeah.
internalize
Yeah.
how this is from the men's point of view. And I did this for years. Never thinking anything of it because it was just what I had to do to get ahead. And as I moved up in market and got to a better station and a better job, and then finally ending up in New York City for the last 7 years of my career, I I just assumed this was normal for so long and that it was okay. And it wasn't until the last few years I got into my early to mid 30s and suddenly, I don't know, age brings wisdom, experience brings wisdom, and I just started feeling like this was not right. Because there's also
Mm,
the element of, if you work really hard and you do your job and you show how good you are, you're going to advance. You're going to get the jobs you deserve. And I began to realize that that was not true because I was a woman.
mm. Yeah, yeah.
And I wasn't okay with that anymore. I was not
Mhm.
okay with that. And as those dominoes fell and I started to have these realizations, I began to see how deep it went, how it wasn't just about what jobs I could get, how it actually came down to the way I was treated, to what it was like being in those locker rooms and the culture that I was now upholding.
Yeah,
The NFL went through a whole lot of domestic abuse
yeah. Mhm.
issues in the mid 2010s. And I did not like the way they handled it. They claimed that they cared about women, that they cared about families, and then, a guy would be right back out playing because he makes them tons of money. They didn't care. And so that I began to feel really not okay about showing NFL highlights and about talking about NFL teams. And at that point, I'm like, well, then what am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing in this business that does not serve me? And it certainly does not serve my gender. And it was taking a toll on my mental health, which, always lends itself into physical health as well. Like the stress and the anxiety, I did not have any joy left in me for my job,
Mm,
for sports.
yeah.
I just, I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. And that's when I realized, I don't have a plan B. I don't have an exit plan, but I need an exit and I needed to get out. And so I did. After 16 years, I walked away. I walked away, and it was in some ways the least wise thing that I could have done because I did not have an exit plan. I do not
Mhm.
recommend not having an exit plan, but it was also the best thing that I could have done for my mental health and for my health in general. And then once leaving the business, then things really started to click, and I really started to see all of the ways that I was being affected by what was happening in that world that I didn't even realize until I was removed from it.
So I have to say, wow, thank you so much because I think that shows so much courage and resilience on your part. And I do wanted to ask you about the women, the competition that women have with each other and that immediate, I think it's like you said, as soon as I see another woman in the room with me, in the boardroom or in the meeting with me, it's like some kind of radar, like,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yep.
internally, I'm like, be careful. And it's in
Yes.
any industry. I mean, I worked in tech industry, obviously, very male dominated. And I didn't think that was an issue. I felt like, oh, I don't need a female mentor. That's fine. I don't think it's unfair. I remember I said that like in my late 20s with my friend because I thought feminism, it's fine. Like we don't need to talk about it. But who knew I was so deep in the system that I internalized so much of it. But yeah, I definitely wanted to ask you about that female rivalry. And I don't know how many times, but I have heard from other people saying that it's so hard to work with women.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I've probably said that before, but now I
Mhm.
think about it, I'm like, huh, really? Actually, like, why? Like, why did I say that? Why did I believe in that? And was it because of the system? And I think it absolutely is.
Yes.
But tell me about that. Like, what does that sentence, that statement
Mhm.
means to you?
Yeah. No, it's so true. It is so hard to work with women. That has been my experience. That it has been incredibly difficult to work with women because we are not encouraged to actually help each other and to actually work with each other. Our interactions, because of the system of misogyny, our interactions are meant to be competition. We are meant to be focused on competing with each other. That there is only, yeah, there's a seat at the table, but there's only one of them. Instead
Hmm.
of, how do we make more seats at the table? We can actually make this table much bigger. There can be more seats here, but the system doesn't work if we do that. And so it keeps us in a constant state of competition with each other. And it's interesting when I think about my life outside of the business. I had so many female friends. I had so many girlfriends. I have always been somebody who has a lot of girlfriends. I have never been one of the, I just have guy friends. I mean, I had maybe a couple here and there, but not close friends. I have
Hmm.
lots of girlfriends. And I never felt, not never is a strong word, but I rarely felt in competition with them. That felt like supportive. We were always there for each other through, all the relationship stuff and just all the life stuff. And I did actually have a couple of good girlfriends who were also in the business as well, who I somehow was able to break through and make friends with. But there was always a bit of an edge to those relationships because
Hmm.
we were still somewhat in competition. Even though we were at different stations, we had different jobs. I wasn't coming for hers directly. She wasn't coming for mine directly. But there was always this feeling of there's only a limited amount of success that
Hmm.
women can have in this business. And so anytime she would get some, I would feel a little bit like, well, that's success that I can't have. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm a bit on edge about that. That's where they overlapped. But all of my friendships outside of TV with women were great and healthy, still are. What it was, that element of being in that world, that sports media world, that
Hmm.
suddenly turned us against each other. Because again, that is how the system is designed. And to constantly be questioning each other,
Yeah.
constantly be questioning each other. And it was so easy to do because the men always questioned us too. The men always asked when a new woman came in, it was like, oh, does she actually know anything about this? Like, is she here for the right reasons? And I internalized all of that. And so,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
if my male coworkers were saying that, then, ooh, yeah, we need to find out what's up with this woman. Is she okay? And there were so many women who I'm sure were absolutely lovely. And I spent so much time and effort in convincing myself to not trust them and to dislike them and to not respect them. And that makes me very sad. It makes me very sad. And another interesting part about when I left TV, those few close relationships that I had with people who with women who were in sports
Hmm.
dissolved. We
Yeah.
they are not in my life anymore.
Mm.
And it it's all tied in. We were friends with each other and I am so grateful for their friendships for the years that we were all in it together. But once I wasn't in it anymore, I didn't serve
Mm.
the relationship. I don't really know why, but those relationships no longer exist. And it's that also makes me sad. But it's this system that is designed to keep us in a constant competition with each other so that we can't do anything about the actual system.
Yeah. And I think what you said about that friendship and how it dissolved once you leave that system or once you leave that environment, I think that was really true for me as well. And I spent so much time thinking about just why, because it felt we were close and then we're not. because we didn't have that competition in a way, like I had to keep her close so that I could observe what she was
Yeah.
doing.
Yep.
It is so sad, but in a way, for me, it feels really free to kind of admit to myself that, okay, that was what's going on. And what's really funny is that when I entered the tech field, there was one female colleague. Immediately, she just started to spread rumors and try to backstab me, and I had no idea why. But what's interesting is that I never hated her because I didn't know her enough to even hate her.
Hmm.
But I just thought it was so weird and I just didn't understand. And now I'm like, okay, I think it's clicking. I get it. I get it. And I feel this immense just empathy for women in general. And it doesn't really matter which industry, because I think we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your message to women? Because I think most of the listeners are women who are still in that system, who's still trying to figure it out, and they're experiencing a lot of the things that we just talked about.
Hmm. Well, I think that's a great question. And, the incident that brought up me talking about all of this was what
Mm,
happened after the USA men's hockey team won gold at the Olympics, and the way that they celebrated, and the comments from our president that were just sexist, misogynistic, ugly, exactly what we would expect from him. But then to see the men laugh about it, and the fallout that has happened from that, that's what led to all of this. So in the days and weeks after that happened, there's been a lot of instances of women from the women's team joining the men in public appearances. They were all on Saturday Night Live together. They've made some talk show rounds together. And I have had people say, like, what is wrong with these women? Why are they standing next to these men who are treating them like this and who have still not apologized? And, I said it in a post, in a follow-up post, and I will say it again. I am not going to criticize them. You will not find me taking them to task, trying to point out all the things that they're doing wrong, because that doesn't help anything. And also, these
mm,
women are trying to survive in the system, and they are so deep in the system right now. And in order for them to have fame, to have people be able to talk about them, to be on so many of these shows, they have to play by a set of rules. And there's a good chance these are women in their early 20s.
mm-hmm,
My goodness, when I was that age, I had no idea what was going on, what was happening in the system that I was in. And so there is a very good chance that, like me, they don't even understand or realize the extent of the world that they are in, and the misogyny of the patriarchy. And so I will not fault them for that. I will not criticize them for that. They are going to find their way. They're going to figure out what makes sense to them. And I know that they're making the decisions that they are making because this is what the system is designed to do. And this is what they have been told they need to do in order to have success. Even if it hasn't been explicitly said to them, you must not care that the men haven't apologized. Like, it's ingrained.
yeah,
They've been absorbing that since they put on their first pair of skates, since they first realized that they were girls when they were kids. Like, this is a system that has been put in place from the
mm,
very, very beginning. So to any women who are listening to this now and are starting to think, huh,
mm-hmm,
that's interesting,
mm-hmm,
follow that.
mm,
Follow that. I do not want you to sit back and think, oh my gosh, all the ways that I wish I would have done things differently, or oh, this is and take it as I have made so many mistakes. Well, we all have. Like, but we are all a product of the environment that we are in, and each
mm,
decision we make, each route that we take, is influenced by the information that we have at the time, which is definitely not the information that we will potentially have down the road when we look back on the ways that we were behaving and the decisions that we have made. So the past is the past. If any of this is starting to ring true for you, is starting to maybe like light up a light bulb, follow that. Think about the ways that this system that of patriarchy, of misogyny has really shaped who you have believed you are supposed to be. And does that version really serve you? Is that really who you are and who you want to be? And the only way we can begin to break down the walls of this system is if we first look at how the system has impacted us individually. It was not until a few years after I was out of the business that I realized that I had carried this resentment and deep dislike for women's sports.
Mm.
Not because I thought, well, I did think that they were inferior sports because that's what the system had taught me to do. Now I look back at it and I'm like, oh my goodness, like how could you have been that sexist yourself? But I was told, I internalized all of this. Like if I become a female, like a reporter who only covers women's sports, then that's all I am. And I never get to do anything else. Men don't respect that. The system doesn't respect that. My career will not take off if that is all I do. So I rejected women's sports in general. I refused to cover them unless I had to. And even when I did it begrudgingly because I had it just instilled in me that women's sports did not matter because men didn't care about them. And all that should matter to me is what men cared about. And so I look back on it now and I'm like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
how many missed opportunities were there? And to not be able to support and promote women, which is all I want to do now, is support and promote women. And I rejected it for so long because I thought it would hold me back in my opportunities. And in the system, it would. And that has been an eye opener. This has been years of unpacking and really thinking about what role I have played in all of this and what the system has done to my belief system and how to really begin to undo it all. And it's conversations like these that we have to be able to have in order to really take a hard look at ourselves and how we move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in your opinion, do you think it's hard to convince someone when they're deep in a system of the reality?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, that's why I'm not going to criticize
Hmm.
women who are deep in the system and are doing what they have to do to survive.
Hmm.
I don't love that sometimes that oftentimes that will then come at the expense of how they treat other women. That I don't love. But there is no way to force someone into these realizations. If somebody had come to me when I was 28 years old, fighting my way to a bigger and better job and market, and somebody said to me, "Hey, do you realize how misogynistic you are for treating women's sports the way you are and for treating the other women around here?" I would have laughed at you because that attitude was not going to help me get to New York. That was not going to help me get to the next best thing. And I would have had no time for it. I would have not been interested in it. I would have said, maybe been willing to admit, well, of course, this business isn't perfect. No business is perfect, but this is my business. I have
Uh,
worked and I have put so much time and effort into getting this far. I'm not stopping now. I'm not having wasted 10 years.
yeah, yeah,
I'm plowing ahead. I really feel like this is something that we all have to come to in our own place, in our own way. But I think that's why conversations like what we are having right now is
yeah,
so important because there could be somebody listening to this who has never at any point thought about where they fit into this system and how it has affected them. And maybe this conversation and hearing this is going to spark a little moment where
yeah.
it opens the door. And it's up to them to walk through it at some point, but we can't push anyone through it.
No, no, because I feel like we need to have that clarity to be out of that in order to see things in its actual form. In a way, can sometimes I would look at these women in their 20s and early 30s, and I just know that they're deep in the system, their way of thinking, their behaviors. I just know, but I feel like I wanted to shake them, but I
Yeah.
cannot, right?
Yeah.
I can only gently give them a little bit of reminder, but I think, like you said, it's just be curious and hopefully they could follow that thought, that
Yeah.
light bulb moment and figure it out. But they do have to walk that path
They
themselves.
do. And I get why they're there. It's safe. That is where it's safest. That is where you have your best opportunity for advancement. How far you could ever advance, all of that to be determined, but that it feels safe. It feels safe. It's your proximity to the patriarchy. And the more you can put yourself close to men, whether it's behaving like them, acting like them, befriending them, trying to be them, the closer you can get to that, the safer you feel. And I think that's the real reason that it is hardest to get out of it. And why it might be easier to get out of it when you are actually removed from the system, because now you don't need that safety anymore. You have a bit of freedom to think broader than you had been allowed to do.
Hmm. Oh my God, Laura, I feel like what you said, that probably can explain, or that probably can just be my therapy sessions for like 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. These are how systems are, and racism is the same way. Systemic racism. I had a conversation once with a Black woman on a podcast that I used to host a few years back, and she was explaining to me all the internalized racism she had, that she felt she had to grow up and marry a white man because that was the only way that she was safe, and that was the only good life that she thought that was the way. And when she told me that, that's when I thought, oh my goodness, it isn't like that is why women can be sexist. That is why
Yeah.
we all are a product of the
Hmm.
system that we are in, all of us, and we do what we have to do to be in a safe place.
My goodness. Yeah, I just felt like there's so many things that I didn't understand, that I was so confused about, that could be just answered because of that internalized system.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, we felt like we had to be close to the system. We're in the system in order to survive, to be comfortable. Now, speaking of comfort, I wanted to talk about, now that you're outside and you're speaking up about it, and you are facing a lot of backlash,
Hmm.
and talk about how that felt. And there's so much courage in you to even just talking about it. But talk me through that process of looking at these comments, and internally, how did you deal with that?
It was a roller coaster because I
Mm,
woke up on the Monday morning 2 weeks ago after that gold medal match, and I woke up to the video of the phone call, and my daughter was still sleeping. I was getting ready, and I'm looking at my phone as I always do, and I saw, of course, I opened up Instagram, and it's like the first 10 things are that video, and hearing the men's laughter ignited something in me. I was so furious. And then my husband had been downstairs and he came up into the bathroom where I was getting ready, and poor guy. he he knows none of this was directed at him, but I
yeah, yeah.
lost it. I'm like, "Have you seen this?" And I just started going off. I'm like, this is sports. None of this surprises me. I'm so angry. And he's like, yeah, I know. I get it. I get it. I get it. And I'm like, this is why we choose the bear. This is why we choose the bear in the forest. We do not want to meet a man. We would much rather meet a bear. And he was like, okay, I get it. I get it. I choose the bear too. I'm like, okay, all right. And at that point, I was like, I need to talk about this. I am so angry right now. I need to talk about this. And my daughter she's in preschool and she has preschool in the afternoons. So I had to wait until she was at
Mhm.
preschool and I couldn't even leave the parking lot of the preschool. Got out my phone. I just started talking in the car in the parking lot of the preschool about my thoughts as a former
Mhm.
sports anchor and reporter about what we had just witnessed. Posted that and at first it didn't get a lot of traction, and then after a couple of hours, it started to, and I was at the park with my daughter after school, and I remember looking at my phone, and I had lost some followers, and I'm like, "This actually tracks," because I still had a lot of followers from my TV days, and I'm like, "I think I'm shedding them," and that was okay because that was no longer the audience that I was trying to talk to. I'm not trying to talk to men about sports anymore, so if they leave, like, bye.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
good luck with your life. We're done. And but then the comments started coming in from people who didn't follow me because now all of a sudden Instagram started showing it to people who did not follow me. And it was just men and women
Mhm.
defending the system, saying I'm overreacting, telling me to get a
Oh.
life, telling me I need therapy.
Ouch.
We all need therapy. Telling me that I have no idea what I'm saying, telling me that they've never even heard of me before, so I couldn't actually be credible. And I'm like, I never at any point did I tell you you should know who I am. I just telling you I am a former sports anchor and reporter. So it was just like we left the park and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is painful. And of course, there were then the comments that were like, yes, thank you for saying this. This is so important. But all I could see at that point was the negative stuff. And I'm not in a situation, I've never had enough followers that I have really gotten a lot of negativity. This was really the first time that I had gotten it at this level. And I didn't regret anything I said. I didn't feel like I was out of line. I didn't feel like any of it was inaccurate, but I did not love reading the negative comments. It was hard. By the end of the night, something had shifted and Instagram was starting to show it more and more. And now all of a sudden, I was gaining hundreds of followers. And that clicked in me that, okay, I need to follow up on this. I need to do something. I need to further this. So that's when the next day I created the viral post doubling down. And it was basically, a fake apology that, I had got all of this backlash. And what it's made me realize is that I should have been talking about this much earlier because I haven't pissed off enough people. And clearly, this has struck a chord. And clearly, this is a problem. So we need to talk more about it. And that post went insane. And, it has 3.5 million views at this point and thousands and thousands of comments that I have not been able to keep up with. But what I can say from everything I have seen, there has not been a negative comment on that post. And I'm sure there are some that have slipped through that I missed, but the the people saying yes, men and women saying this, yes, we feel this, we are with you. The fact that that alone gained 120,000 followers shows me that there are a lot of us who feel this way, who are waking up to this, who are realizing the issues that misogyny and the patriarchy have created for all of us and are ready to start doing something about it. So I think that's, other than in addition to the overwhelm of suddenly having so many eyeballs on my content, I felt just so much hope that
Mm.
we are not alone in this. that we are actually, the more people that we're upsetting, like that is good. We're making them uncomfortable. They should be uncomfortable. They should be thinking about these things whether or not it's going to change their mind at all. It won't, probably, but it's making them nervous,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it is mixing up this stable world that they have been living in and enjoying at the expense of so many other people.
Right.
And so that is a huge thing that I am taking forward now. And I, in a follow-up post then that I did after
Mhm.
the men's and women's players were on Saturday Night Live, that did pretty well also,
Mhm.
and that is continuing to get
Mhm. Mhm.
so many negative comments, so many insecure men. And in this case, it is mostly men who are just saying terrible things to me and calling me terrible names and all of this stuff. And I'm laughing at it now. Each one that I see now that comes in, I'm like, I've got you right where I want you. Like, you are upset. You are upset. And that is good. I want you to be upset. I want you to be upset right now. And I know that we are on the right side of this. And I feel very confident that we have the numbers, and we are going to be able to make some changes by working together and talking about this. And, nothing happens overnight, but the ball is rolling.
And I mean, that's exactly how I found you because the viral post. I think for me personally, that really reaffirmed that courage that we all have. But I think we just wanted to see someone who is brave enough to talk about it, who's brave enough to say, I don't really care. Like, great that you're upset. Great that, you're saying all these bad things, but that's exactly what I want because we're breaking the system. And I think that that's really what changed for me. That's why I immediately click follow on your content because I just feel like, oh, I need this. I need Laura so that I can also be brave as well and to talk
Definitely.
about things that I'm not able to talk about. For example, this particular conversation.
Yes, yes. And I think it is easier for people like you and me to be able to have this conversation specifically about the industries that we were in, because we are no longer in them. And we have
Yeah.
that freedom and flexibility. I mean, I could not be doing this if I were still in the business. I could not be saying any of this if I were still in the business, even if I believed it all, even if I had had these awakenings prior to leaving the business. I couldn't have said it. It would have been career suicide. So the fact that I'm not in it gives me some protection to be able to do and say what I need to say.
hmm Yeah, 100%. And the same for me as well because I'm not in it. And when I left, I did not have plan B either.
All right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, yeah, I did not. I don't think that was particularly wise because, yeah, that was a lot of anxiety following up that, like, what am I supposed to do now? But it had to happen. And obviously, I'm thankful for that moment for you because then this happens. I mean,
Yeah.
I think now that you have so much clarity and so much courage, I'm really grateful for that, by the way, because I felt like that was a really wise moment, to be honest.
Oh, I'm so glad that this has connected me with people like you, because these are the conversations we need to be having. They're the conversations I want to be having. And I'm so excited that this little post that I just put together in a coffee shop on a whim did what it did and has opened up what it has. And I don't want to act like I'm the one that's doing, like, there are a lot of people who are talking about this and who are doing this. And I'm just a little part that joined in and got some
hmm
momentum. But there are a lot of voices out there. We just need to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to end our conversation with one question that I always ask, and I'm so curious about your answer, is that what is your definition of soft power?
So I've been thinking about that. And, I feel like when we think of power, you think of this strong, tough, has a stature to it, is dominating. And that is such a power that I have always felt I'm supposed to be if I ever want to be successful. And so to me, the idea of soft power is the power that is inside of you, the power that drives you, and whatever that looks like, that it isn't just this one beastly strength. That power can be quiet, it can be light, it can be forceful, it can be so many different things. To me, the idea of soft power is the power that is inside of you, the power that drives you, and the power that really speaks to you and who you are, and the power that makes you feel strong, whatever
Mhm.
strength means.
Yeah. And to me, I feel like you have the ultimate soft power because you have the power to say, aha, like, you can say all you want, all the negative comments, but I'm not afraid because this is exactly what I wanted to do. And that means I'm doing the right thing. And I think if that's not power, I don't know what it is. And yeah, I just wanted to say, I feel like you said, there is hope. And the world is absolutely crazy.
It
It's so
is. It's scary.
depressing.
It's scary.
But actually following you because of your post, I do feel like there is a hope. And seeing that you're getting so many followers, there's so much hope. And I'm so happy because I cannot wait for women to finally speak up in 2026 and starting to change
Yeah.
something, change the system. Yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna save the world. I don't know how. I don't know when. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but it's conversations like these. It is
Hmm.
moments like these. It is relationships like these that this is what is going to change the world. I have that hope. I have to have that hope. We've been doing the patriarchy long enough. It's
I
time for
know.
something new.
Yeah, something new for sure. And I'll have all your information in the show notes below. Is there anything that you'd like to say to my listeners today?
Oh, I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity to have this conversation with you and to be able to speak to your audience as well, and just know that, we are all we're doing our best. We are doing our best, and all we can hope is that the next day our best might be a little bit better. Some days it's not going to be, but beating ourselves up for our beliefs previously or how we have behaved or handled ourselves is not the best use of our resources and our efforts and our emotions and our time, and that we are doing our best, and we can only make the decisions that we have in front of us with the information we have at the time. And so we just try to gain more information as time goes on. And so you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, I think we're all doing a really good job. Have compassion to all the women because
Yes.
God, we need one. We need compassion at this point.
Yes, we
Yeah.
do.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's
Thanks,
been
Sherry.
such a pleasure.
It has. I appreciate it.